Every morning, a familiar voice calms the rattled nerves of Washington, D.C. rush hour drivers.
All right, we will spend some more time in the next hour about the Dan Quinn hiring, and maybe you're kind of blasé about it, ungeblasen, as we sometimes say. But you know what? You got to see. And
Andy Pollin has been doing sports talk radio for over 40 years.
Quinn called him. I mean, when I started, there wasn't even ESPN.
What makes a good sports show?
Strong opinions that you can articulate well. I'm not real keen on Chip Kelly. You have a decrepit facility in Ashburn, and you have the worst stadium in the league. Jason Garrett, who's an analyst for NBC, he was a terrible game analyst, by the way.
You can hear Pollin Monday through Friday on WMAL radio, and each day he gives his audience a little history lesson.
Well, 70 years ago today, this college basketball player named Bevo Francis, and this is the night that Bevo Francis goes for 113 points.
Pollin grew up in Montgomery County, and his radio career may have started in the cafeteria at his high school, BCC.
I was the guy who was arguing for Sonny against Billy at the lunch table at BCC in the 70s. So maybe I was born to do this, I don't know.
He also caught the acting bug in high school.
I did the plays in high school. We had a great drama teacher in P.J. D'Alessanta. I thought, pie in the sky, maybe I can become an actor.
Instead, Pollin went to American University and found his true love, radio.
And before I knew it, that's where I was spending all my time.
But in his sophomore year, he left AU and got a job in Port Arthur, Texas.
And I told my parents I wanted to take this job for $160 a week and quit school. And they said, well, you have to promise to finish school. And I went there, worked there for a year. Then I went to San Antonio, where they had a bigger station there, and I worked there, and I finished school at Trinity University, and then I went to Dallas.
Andy Pollin came back to Washington, D.C. to work for UPI. Then one day he spotted an ad in a newspaper.
That there was a radio station in New York called WHN that was going to convert to all sports.
The station became the first all-sports station in the country, WFAN.
And I sent a tape and a resume, and one thing led to another, and I got my start there.
In 1992, sports radio was expanding, and it came to Washington.
You're on the team, sports radio.
Charlie, hello.
Mitch Rales, now part owner of the Washington Commanders, and his brother Steve started WTEM Sports Radio.
We started, he and his brother were late 30s, early 40s, and they were, this was like a cool play toy for them. And they would hang out sometimes in the newsroom and just, say, this is great, sitting around talking sports all day. This is like a great job.
Montgomery County Council President Andrew Friedson grew up listening to Andy Pollin and stopped by the studio.
Talk a little bit about what it's been like being a lifelong Washington area sports fan and to do this for a living.
It's more fun talking about teams that you're passionate about, that I grew up rooting for. Joe Gibbs, oh, there he goes again, talking about Joe Gibbs. Yes, when Joe Gibbs came here in 1981, my father took me to my first game, I think it was 1968. So, almost, 60 years of passion for this team. That I'm able to use my historical knowledge. They went into that year, and Riggins held out, didn't play that year, and the bottom fell out. And that's what I generally work into my conversations about the teams. I can do that, whereas if I was in another place, I'd be relying on other people to ask about those sort of things.
You've worked with and around some luminary figure that you've had.
I mean, in some ways it's like being Forrest Gump. Some of the people that I've been in a studio with. I'm back to WFAN when I was one of the early fill-ins doing sports on the Imus show. Really what was a big boost to my career when we started WTEM in 1992, Tony Kornheiser was one of the original hires. I became his sidekick for 14 years locally, and then when he went to ESPN Radio, I went with him. I had a great run with Steve Zabin.
Well, Andy, that's if he doesn't finally demand a trade.
He's got to have takers for a trade.
One of the great thrills for me, Warner Wolf came back to town. I got to work with him.
Andy Pollin, the local boy who made good.
I've been in my career, had a a board op and a producer and a co-host.
In a town he loves, talking about sports.
Is he a better athlete? Absolutely.
How can anything be better than that?
Doing something that I'm passionate about and is fun, I mean, it's been great. It's been great for me. It's a lot of fun. It's really good. Andy Pollin, ESPN 630.
In Northwest Washington, I'm Mike Springerth reporting.